Interesting juncture in the history of American art, especially given the impact of technology and the new ways of accessing information and other people. It makes me wonder, what new terms will evolve to describe the group now known as self-taught? And as Kevin asked, is it really possible for artists to be unschooled?
American Art from the Outside In was a Curtains for Radio production for BBC Radio 4. The producers were Louise Morris and Andrew McGibbon. In today's Forethought, Joe Dunthorne asks what could be learned about living together from the mosh pit at a rock gig. That's in 5 minutes. Then are TSB's IT problems leaving customers at risk of fraud? You and yours is at 12:15.
I kept reading and reading and reading and reading. How do you do that? How do you make people care about things they don't care about?
Conversations between artists.
When I had a show in Italy, there were more bodyguards than exhibits.
It's not about selling. It's about making a statement, being creative, inventive, that will make people talk about it and ask questions. It's almost like a little sugar hit. Some can be really melancholy, but a great rhyme is like a little zinger moment. It's just pure pleasure, isn't it?
The musician Tracy Thorne and the filmmaker Carol Moore open the new series of Only Artists on BBC Radio 4 next Wednesday morning at 9.
BBC News at midday. The Defence Secretary Gavin Williamson has said he's confident the Home Office will waive fees for Afghan interpreters who want to stay in this country. Supporters say that dozens of Afghans who were given sanctuary after risking their lives working with British troops face being sent back at the end of their 5-year visa. Mr Williamson said Britain owed them a debt of gratitude.
These are people, they have every right to be here. They've served alongside our armed forces. They've done an amazing job working with our armed forces in Afghanistan. And we have a personal duty to do the right thing by them. And I know that's something that's felt right across government.
A worker at the University of Brighton has been jailed for 28 years for murdering his boss after becoming obsessed with her. David Browning, who's 52, repeatedly stabbed Gillian Howell at her home and wrote the word bully on her forehead. An investigation has rejected claims that more than 100 dementia patients in North Wales were subjected to deliberate abuse or neglect. It contradicts the findings of an independent report from 2015, which concluded that there was institutional abuse at the Tawavan mental health ward near Rhyl. The author of today's wider-ranging inquiry, Dr. Andrula Johnson, said failings in care didn't automatically mean that patients had been mistreated.
The investigation panel concludes that the evidence relied upon previously was, on occasions, incomplete, misinterpreted, taken out of context, based on inaccurate and at times misleading information, misunderstood, with thresholds being applied incorrectly.
Mirror Group newspapers have settled 4 more claims for damages from people who had their phones hacked by private investigators. The former Manchester United footballers Dwight York and Andrew Cole, the model Danielle Lloyd and the actress Jennifer Ellison. The company has settled dozens of claims. More cracks have been found in a reactor at the Hunterston B nuclear power station in North Ayrshire. The reactor will be offline until later this year, and electricity generation at the station could fall by 40%. James Shaw reports from Glasgow.
One of the 2 reactors at Hunterston B was taken offline in March and was expected to start working again this month. But the power company EDF, which runs the site, says more cracks than expected have appeared in graphite bricks in the reactor's core. Hunterston was originally due to close in 2011, but it remains an important part of electricity generation for the UK, and its working life has been extended until 2023. That was always expected to result in increased wear and tear, but the site's director, Colin Weir, insisted today that their plans were well within safety margins.
The electric car company Tesla has reported its worst ever results, posting a loss of almost $710 million in the first quarter of the year. However, the company expects to hit its weekly target of building 5,000 of its new Model 3 cars later this year. Despite the huge losses, Californian investor Ross Gerber is a fan.
Climate change is a major issue affecting the world. If we do not solve the emissions issue with automobiles, we're all doomed. So Tesla needs to be successful and lead other car companies into this kind of EV revolution that we need to really protect our world.
Hundreds of workers at Kellogg's are being offered the chance to finish work at noon on Fridays during the summer. More than 400 staff at the firm's headquarters in Salford will be able to work more hours earlier in the week to give themselves a long weekend. Kellogg says research shows people who have a good work-life balance are more productive than those who don't. BBC News.
Now on Radio 4, Forethought. In a repeat of an earlier programme, Joe Dunthorne gives a personal view in front of an audience at the RSA in central London. The presenter is David Baddiel.
Confrontation is something which I generally avoid at all costs. I can't bear it. This isn't actually a good thing. I think if I'd been in charge during the war, I'd just have let them not, because it would have just been easier, less awkward. Although not afterwards, obviously. Joe Dunthorne is cut from the same cloth. However, years in, of all places, the mosh pit at gigs have made him think differently about the value of confrontation. Joe Dunthorne.
The first gig I ever went to was at the Brixton Academy. I was 13 and my escort for the night was my older sister's boyfriend, Glyn. He was more of an idol to me than the members of Green Day, the band on stage. He bought me cider with a blackcurrant top and taught me how to crowd surf. Linking his hands together to make a step, he helped launch me. Since I was skinny and wore baggy clothes, maximum surface area, minimum weight, I was tossed easily around, kicking strangers' heads, colliding with elaborate haircuts. I was lobbed towards the stage and finally fell headfirst into the densest part of the crowd. Moments later, the same strangers held back the crowd to give me space. Others were pulling me upright, dusting me down, and one man was encouraging me to join him in some righteous air drumming. For the next hour, I was part of a community. It was not all friendly or all painless, but it was underpinned by a spirit of mutual tolerance. When I stepped from the venue and had another human being's blood on my t-shirt, I understood that person's sacrifice had been for something worthwhile. It is my belief that we ought to apply a little more mosh pit psychology to our day-to-day lives. In my experience of punk crowds, it is considered absolutely standard procedure to push someone away when they are annoying. If you are ska dancing in steel toe-cap boots with your elbows like sides, then it's a given you'll get shoved. If you go on someone's shoulders, expect abuse from those whose view you're blocking. If you faint, however, then those around you will lift you above their heads and pass your limp body forward to the security guards. These are self-policing zones, and the social lubricant is a kind of anti-sensitivity. Nobody gets too upset by things that are annoying, and nobody gets too angry when they're told to shut up. Of course, sometimes people go too far. They are usually punched by bottles of human urine falling from the sky. At a West End theatre, money is the deciding factor on where you are seated. But for most live music events, once you've paid the entry fee, you are launched into a status vacuum where, second by second, your position in the hierarchy shifts. There is no system. You have no reservation. People who try to insert organisational structures invariably end up frustrated. If you arrive early to get a good spot, then you should expect that 10 seconds before the first chord gets played, a huge man will push in front of you. And as you fume quietly behind him, beads of his ponytail sweat will land on your forehead. And I am on his side. Unless you communicate with this person, you have no right to feel aggrieved. In a good crowd, the normal barriers to communication, awkwardness, meanness, fear, are removed and we find ourselves speaking to our neighbours. That's what can be so revelatory. The closer you get to the front of rock concerts, the more that everyone is pushed, literally, into speaking to each other, and the more successful that community becomes. In some big gigs and at festivals, groups of people sometimes try to make little citadels of protected space. They pile bags up to stop trespassers. They link their arms. They erect barriers of camping chairs. But these are not the people enjoying themselves. They have created something they now need to protect, a private zone, a gated community, upon which inconsiderate strangers keep infringing. Everyone can and will and should push in. It is at the heart of rock music. But there are good and bad ways to push, just as there are good and bad ways to be pushed past. Here are a few basic techniques. 1. Touchy-feely. Lead with your hand and apologise as you go, patting people on the upper arm and shoulder, calling them mate or dude or pal or buddy or comrade, whatever feels right, and making eye contact on the way as much as possible. This technique is not for everyone. It requires confidence, charisma, and an uncreepy way with your hands. Technique 2. Utilitarian. This is my preferred method, since I do not have the sensual qualities necessary for technique 1. The policy is the least aggravation for the least number. Scientific inquiry has taught me that it is easiest to approach the front of the stage along the sides of the room. But once you reach one of the front corners, it is from this point that you push in, taking a backwards diagonal line towards the middle of the crowd. This has 3 benefits. First, the people you are pushing past see you coming, making chummy eye contact that much easier. Secondly, everyone is just pleased to see someone moving towards the back of the room. Thirdly, the typical shape of the crowd in concentric circles allows you to ride gaps between lines of fans for ease of movement. Technique 3, the "this is my moment" technique. It's high risk and high speed. This method is best deployed at the start of a song with the battle cry, "Oh my God, I love this one." It's hard for people to dislike an enthusiast. You charge forward quickly, pushing people aside, singing along loudly to warn those ahead, and soon enough you'll find the crowd parting in anticipation. Someone else. Part of attending rock concerts is learning to tolerate and even support your fellow woman or man as they battle past, elbowing you in the ribs en route. As we get older, we become less skilled at having our personal space invaded by strange, sweaty individuals. You may say this is a good thing, but I say we need to keep in touch with discomfort. What a life skill to not get grumpy because someone barges past as their favourite song comes on. Because we know that, philosophically speaking, our favourite song might be next, and we will be allowed to barge past too. But look what happens when I allow my sense of entitlement to become inflated. Welcome to the quiet carriage. Those 2 words transform me into a restless, noise-hypersensitive pedant with no basic human social skills. I glance at someone typing too loudly. Then I glance really hard at the tiny sign that says they should be considerate. I seethe, but I never communicate. But in the psychology of a rock crowd, when someone stamps on my feet, I say, "Oh mate, you're stamping on my feet." It's simple. I don't know why I find this kind of communication so difficult in day-to-day life. My neighbours wake me playing party hip-hop at 3 a.m. Either I go and say something, or I stay up all night staring furiously at the wall, preparing the put-downs I will never use, carrying that resentment for years to come. Carrying that resentment even when I've moved houses. Contaminating all future neighbours with my hatred. The flip side is that, if I am loudly playing my rock records, and I can't help but imagine my neighbours, like me, silently fuming, and that pretty much spoils my fun. If only we had an understanding that we were both willing to complain when necessary. It would be better for everyone. I could listen to my music loudly, without guilt, because I'd know that if I was upsetting someone, they'd let me know. To be a positive part of a quiet carriage, or a shared house, or a mosh pit, or any other community, we need to make our feelings known in a way that is not invested with years of frustration. We should be publicly discontented more, in small ways, every day. Some people just don't realise how annoying they are. You can't hate them for that. By the same token, we need to practice being told off. The older we get, the less capable we are of taking criticism. Think of all the great writers who have gradually gotten worse and worse as they've become more touchy about having their work critiqued. And think of all the great editors who are more and more scared of subjective reactions. Social friction takes practice. Use it or lose it. I can vividly remember the first time I asked a boy to put his ice cream wrapper in the bin. He was not a physical threat, being probably 7 years old. But little did he know he represented a lifetime of grievances. As my body flooded with adrenaline, he cheerfully put the wrapper in the bin. Oh God, it felt good. But that euphoria is not a helpful emotion. I should not feel victorious. And if he had turned to me and said, "Get a grip, Grandad," I should have been able to take that on board too. To return to the mosh pit, a little shove in the back to let the guy in front know that you've got a mouthful of hair from his head banging you. It's nothing. But it takes practice to take the emotion out of it, for it not to be about winning or losing. I hope, in the fullness of time, to be able to ask a teenager to stop playing music on their phone without having heart palpitations. I hope to receive complaints about my cycling style with humility and good humour. Finally, on a more practical note, if you have complained, shoved, or thrown bottles of urine at a problem and found it unresolved, there is a practical solution which may help, a way to stem rage before it becomes debilitating. The following cheap plastic item is a solution to many of the world's problems. Earplugs. The quiet carriage, neighbours playing dubstep, morons yapping about nothing on their phones, all are solved by cheap bits of rubbery goo. Proof, if anyone needed, that we should look to rock concerts for our social values. They hand out free earplugs at the bar.
Joe Dunthorne was the speaker in Forethought, which was presented by David Baddiel. The producer was Giles Edwards, and you can catch up with the rest of the series via BBC iPlayer Radio. This is BBC Radio 4. Now it's You and Yours with Winifred Robinson.
Hello, welcome to Radio 4's Consumer Programme. Today, TSB still struggling to fix its IT problems. Are customers at greater risk of fraud? The online dating sites that can be as hard to leave as a relationship.
I had to confirm that I was sure that I wanted to leave on at least 5 different pages. Pop-ups coming up saying, "Are you sure you want to leave? Are you sure you want to stop? This will stop your subscription."
If councils charge people to use tips, will they just dump their rubbish?
We're fundamentally worried about anything that may increase the risk of fly tipping. It's a major issue in the countryside. It's getting worse.
And why there are so few disabled people in classical orchestras.
There are still an alarming number of concert halls where you can't get on the stage if you use a wheelchair. Thanks to technology, there is no longer a barrier to any person with any kind of impairment making music to the very highest level, should they so wish.
That's the conductor Charles Hazelwood, and he'll be telling us how disability can change how music is written, played and enjoyed. If you'd like to get in touch with us, email youandyours@bbc.co.uk. On social media, it's #youandyours, or text us. You can send your messages to 84844. Some TSB customers are still struggling with the effects of the bank's bungled IT upgrade, and now they have another thing to watch out for. Scammers pretending to be from TSB have been sending emails and tweets that could trick customers into handing over their PIN numbers and passwords. TSB has put out a warning about it. Our reporter John Douglas can bring us up to date. John, what's the bank saying?
TSB posted a message on its social media accounts saying customers have reported getting messages from people claiming to be from TSB. The bank pointed out it would never ask for security details, things like PINs or full passwords, and it would only contact people via social media using its official Twitter or Facebook pages. Now, this comes after major computer problems for TSB, which left many of its customers with patchy access access to internet banking. The fraudulent email we've seen asks people to check their bank accounts by logging in using a supposedly secure link. It was sent to the financial blogger Sarah Pennells, who spotted it was a scam, not least because she's not a customer of TSB. She says criminals often piggyback on things that are in the news.
They know that some people will unfortunately fall for these kind of emails, and especially if they have that added, well, what seems like credibility of coming off the back of an event. And you know, these emails these days do look quite plausible. They're not like the ones we used to get years ago with spelling mistakes and terrible grammar. They watch out for events like this, and that's exactly when they know people may be paying a bit less attention, or you know, their guard will be down because they'll be expecting to hear from their bank after there's been the kind of problems we've seen with TSB.
As TSB dealt with those problems last week, it posted messages online saying it was working around the clock to sort things out. But Annette from East Sussex had trouble getting through to their fraud team on Friday after discovering her bank account had been emptied.
My account has been suspended. The email had an ad at the top in big capital letters saying enjoy all the benefits with a subscription, which again led me to think that the site was trying to sell me a new subscription as mine had already expired. And it is only if you choose to read the entire email confirming the suspension of your account that on the 4th paragraph it is explained to you that suspending the account does not suspend the automatic renewal.
Which is a bit strange, really, isn't it? Because if you decided to suspend your account, it's not really likely to want to auto-renew it, is it?
Exactly, yes. I was sure that...
So how do you make sure that your subscription to Match.com does not auto-renew?
Finally, I had to reactivate my account, which I'd already suspended, to terminate my subscription, and that is a different page. And then when I chose the option of terminating my subscription, I had to confirm that I was sure that I wanted to leave on at least 5 different pages. So different pop-ups coming up saying, are you sure you want to leave? Are you sure you want to stop? This will stop your subscription.
So how much does it cost you?
This time around, I think it was £89.
That was Arilis Rodriguez, one of our listeners. Well, we spoke to Match.com. We invited them to come on the programme. They said no, but they told us if you currently have a paid subscription and you want to make sure you're not charged again at the end of your term, you'll need to turn off auto-renewal. To do this, please visit the change/cancel membership page under your account settings, brackets, the gear icon, then go to subscription. Or they say you can cancel your membership by sending the company written notice of cancellation to Match.com. India Kang is a dating and relationships coach. India, I'm guessing this is a problem that you know about.
Yes, and it's interesting listening to that audio because I had a similar experience with Match myself when I was dating. And it's not just Match.com, it's other dating sites which are also following a similar business strategy, because at the end of the day, this is business for them.
Pretty much all of the online dating services and apps in the world are owned by just 2 companies. I think one American, one Russian. Do they all use this business model? I mean, is it a bit like gyms used to be, that the terms and conditions are designed to make it really hard for you to just let your membership lapse?
I mean, some dating sites are free, so you just won't have this problem with renewed subscription. But it's not just dating sites, it's business as a whole. It's really up to the user, and if you're tech savvy, you'll understand that you've got to go in and change your account settings. But if you're not tech savvy, then yeah, you might get stung. I mean, I got stung, and I consider myself tech savvy.
They say this auto-renewal is there so that there's no disruption to your service, so that you won't miss out. And they say that when people like our listener Arilis can prove they have cancelled an account, they'll make sure they get an auto-renewal refunded. Is that easy in your experience?
Not in my experience. I wasn't able to get my money refunded. So what they're saying here is that if you suspend your account, you've still got to pay. So I understand why they do that, because a lot of people seem to yo-yo date. They date for a month and they go off for a month. So they're obviously capitalising on those people that get fed up with dating and then want to come back again.
When you join and you take out a subscription, can you straight away go to the part of the website that will stop that subscription from auto-renewing?
You can, but again, it depends on how tech savvy you are. So once I got stung, when I did it again, when I renewed my subscription, the first thing I did was go into account settings. And that's one of the first things I tell every one of my clients. The first thing I tell them is that make sure that when you've created an account and you've paid the subscription fee, you go into your account settings and you cancel automatic renewal.
Now, there's no independent regulator or arbitrator for the UK dating industry, and there was only a voluntary association setting minimum standards set up in 2013. Match.com features regularly in investigations by consumer groups and articles online. Are things improving in your experience?
I personally didn't have a very good experience with Match, but I do have clients who have met really good men on Match. It's a real case-by-case basis.
But do you think that in terms of how easy it is to make sure you don't end up paying the money you don't want to give them, has that improved or not with Match?
No, I don't think that's improved. I think unless you actively know that's what you have to do, you're going to get caught out. I think they can make that a lot more easier.
That was India Khan. She's a relationships coach. She was speaking to me this. And if you have had any problems with any dating sites, with auto-renewal or anything else, please email us, you and yours, at bbc.co.uk. It's 28 minutes past 12. This is You and Yours. I'm Winifred Robinson. Coming up here, a new investigation into the abuse of patients at an NHS psychiatric ward, and the disabled musicians finally breaking into the world of classical music. First, though, before all that, Sarah Montague is going to tell us about today's World at One. Sarah, what have you got today?
Thanks, Winifred. Well, 2 weeks after its botched computer switchover, we'll be looking at the state of TSB. How much trouble is the bank in? And what those customers are still struggling to make or receive payments. Donald Trump has denied that he paid off the porn star Stormy Daniels. Now his team appear to have suggested that he did. His legal aid, Rudy Giuliani, said as much in an interview. Did he mean to? And why own up now? And the Basque separatist group ETA gives up the ghost after its 40-year terror campaign. We'll report on the moment that it finally fully disbands today.
Thank you, Sarah. A study by Arts Council England has found that disabled people are seriously underrepresented when it comes to employment in the music projects and organisations it supports. Only 0.6% of musical artists have a disability, whereas around 16% of the working age population in Britain is disabled in some way. There are new initiatives, though, aimed at
disabled people are much better represented. I asked Heather Bradshaw, a disabled violinist in the City of Birmingham Symphony Orchestra, why disabled musicians seem to be almost invisible.
I don't think there's anybody like me that uses a mobility scooter within rehearsals to get to the side of the stage in concerts. I think the reality is that the majority of orchestras would be very concerned about whether people with serious disabilities would be able to A, access all the venues, and B, cope with the rigours of orchestral life.
So, over the past 30 years, has, she says, been very good, and she hopes that increased awareness around disability will give younger musicians opportunities to play, thanks to organisations such as Drake Music, which develops technology for disabled people to make music. The number of disabled people at some music colleges appears to be on an upward trend too, with disabled students accounting for between 10 and 20% of the overall intake. One-handed pianist Nicholas McCarthy argues, though, that conservatoires could do more.
The curriculums are very strict. You know, in your first year you have to play a Beethoven piano sonata, and your second year you have to play X, Y and Z. Whereas obviously if you can't play that, not through choice but through disability, but you can offer up something else of equal difficulty, then surely that would be a good substitute. But a lot of the places aren't very open to that substitution. It's a real shame when I hear these kind of stories where they're not as supportive, or they feel very caught between a rock and a hard place, really, because they like the traditional teaching but at the same time they can't really be traditionally taught.
Nicholas McCarthy, and in that report by Fiona Clampin. Well, I've been talking to the conductor Charles Hazelwood. He set up the British Para Orchestra in 2012. It calls itself the world's only large-scale ensemble for disabled musicians. Charles, we heard about the small number of disabled people who go into classical music. Where are the people in your Para Orchestra drawn from? How easy is it to find them?
Do you know, it's been actually remarkably easy to find them. They come actually from a much broader range of backgrounds than purely classical music. I mean, there are sitar players, there are laptop players, there are lap steel guitar players, Celtic harps, etc. The list goes on. So it's an orchestra, and we use the term playfully, but they're actually coming from pretty much all corners of the musical spectrum.
Classical orchestras haven't changed that much, have they, in the last 100 or so years?
It's so true, this is...
Why is this question of having disabled people in the orchestra such a big challenge to them?
Well, look, it's a challenge on a number of issues. Some of them are beyond the controls of the orchestras. I mean, the fact that even in the UK, there are still an alarming number of concert halls where you can't physically get on the stage if you use a wheelchair. In terms of the orchestras, yes, I mean, it can still carry on and should and must carry on playing its Brahms and its Bruckner and its Beethoven. But there's no reason on earth why orchestras can't be actively commissioning